What would you do? If someone you buried with your own hands returned to the market to finish selling her goods? Not in a dream, not in a story, but in broad daylight, where everyone could see her. This is not just a tale of death. It is a tale of greed, secrets, and a spirit that refused to rest. Listen carefully, because sometimes the marketplace hears what the grave cannot keep silent. In the heart of Umuahia village stood Afor Market, wide, loud, and alive. Colorful umbrellas lined the red earth paths. Women in bright ankara wrappers balanced baskets on their heads. The smell of roasted corn mixed with dried fish and fresh pepper. And in the center of it all was Mama Adanma. She was not the richest trader, but she was the most loved. Every morning before the first cock crowed, she tied her indigo wrapper firmly around her waist, wrapped a yellow scarf over her braided hair, and adorned her neck with simple coral beads that once belonged to her mother. Her stall was always the busiest. Fresh okra, shiny garden eggs, pumpkin leaves sprinkled with water to keep them crisp. But what drew people to her was not just her produce. It was her heart. If a widow came without money, she would whisper, "Pay me next week." If a child lingered too long staring at mangoes, she would slip one into their hands. But at home, her only son, Emeka, did not share her kindness. Emeka was tall, handsome, and impatient. He wore imported shirts from the city and polished leather sandals. He dreamed of big cars and cement houses with iron gates. "Mama," he would say, pacing their small compound, "you are wasting your life in that dirty market. Sell the land father left behind. Let me invest in something bigger." Mama Adanma would sit on her wooden stool, fanning herself gently. "My son," she would reply softly, "wealth that comes too quickly often leaves too quickly." Emeka would hiss, "You are too old-fashioned." But what Mama Adanma did not know was that her son had already borrowed money from dangerous men in the city. Men who did not accept excuses. Men who demanded payment. So it was a hot market day. The sun burned fiercely. Traders wiped sweat from their foreheads. Flies buzzed lazily over ripe fruit. Mama Adanma had just finished arguing with Emeka that morning. He had demanded she sign over a portion of their land. She refused. Her voice was firm for once. No. That single word echoed in his ears. By afternoon, dark clouds gathered unexpectedly. Thunder rumbled. Mama Adanma clutched her chest suddenly. The basket of peppers slipped from her hands, scattering across the ground. "Mama Adanma!" Ngozi, the fish seller, screamed. Traders rushed forward. She collapsed. Her coral beads rolled across the red earth. By the time the village herbalist arrived, she was gone. The entire market mourned. Women wailed loudly. Men beat their chests in sorrow. She was wrapped in a white cloth and buried behind her house under the large udala tree. Emeka cried loudly at the funeral. Too loudly, some whispered. But grief can look different for everyone. And no one questioned him. 3 days later, on the next market day, something happened. Ngozi was arranging dried fish when she felt a familiar presence. She looked up and froze. The standing in front of her stall was Mama Adanma, wearing her indigo wrapper, yellow scarf neatly tied, coral beads resting against her chest. Ngozi dropped the fish in her hands. "Mama?" The woman smiled gently. "Take care of my stall," she said calmly. Her voice sounded distant, echoing. Then she turned and walked toward her old vegetable table. Other traders saw her too. They watched as she touched the wooden surface of her stall and rearranged vegetables that were not even there. She vanished, gone, as if swallowed by the afternoon heat. The market erupted in panic. By evening, the entire village was talking. She came back. I saw her shadow. She bought tomatoes. Some said it was grief playing tricks. Others said her spirit was restless. But one person did not sleep that night. Emeka, because he remembered something no one else knew. The morning she died, he had pushed her, not hard enough to kill her. At least, that was what he believed. They were arguing again. She refused to sell the land. In anger, he grabbed her arm. She stumbled. Her head hit the edge of the wooden table. The sound still haunted him. He had panicked. The next market day, people gathered early. Fear mixed with curiosity. The air felt heavy. At exactly midday, the wind shifted unnaturally. Umbrellas shook violently. Vegetables rolled off tables. Whispers, and then she appeared. But this time, she was different. Her eyes were darker. Her smile gone. She did not look at the traders. She looked straight at Emeka, who had followed secretly. Their eyes locked. He tried to move. His legs refused. She began walking toward him slowly. Each step silent. Each step deliberate. The crowd parted in terror. "Return what you took," her voice echoed. Emeka trembled violently. I don't understand." Her head tilted. "Return what you took." Suddenly, baskets overturned without being touched. Children screamed. Screaming, the sky darkened unnaturally. Then she raised her hand and pointed directly at him. "You will speak," and vanished again. That night, Emeka could not breathe. He locked himself inside his room. Sweat soaked his shirt, but just as he closed his eyes, he heard it, a soft knock. From inside his room, not at the door, but from beneath his bed. Slow knocking, he slowly bent down, heart pounding, and what he saw made the blood drain from his face. There, under the bed, lay his mother's coral beads, the same ones buried with her, wet, covered in fresh red earth. And as he stared at them, a voice whispered from the darkness, "Tomorrow you will confess." But then another voice echoed behind him, deeper, colder. "No, he belongs to me now." Emeka turned slowly, and the window slammed shut. Who was the second voice? What truly caused Mama Adanma's death? And what price would Emeka pay? Some secrets refuse to stay buried. The market will learn the truth, but not everyone will survive it. The beads were still on the floor, wet, freshly stained with red earth. Emeka stared at them, his hands trembling. "I buried these. I saw them buried," he whispered. Then the second voice returned, deeper, colder. He signed. The oil lamp exploded. Glass shatters. Darkness swallowed the room. Emeka screamed and stumbled backward, hitting the wooden wall. From beneath his bed, something began crawling out. Not fully visible, just a shifting darkness. Breathing, and then a hand, not human, long-shadowed, twisted. It stretched toward him. "You belong to us." Emeka burst out of the house barefoot, screaming into the night. Screaming. The moon hung low over the Udala tree where his mother was buried. But as he approached, he froze. The soil over her grave was no longer disturbed. It was cracked open. From inside, a faint golden glow flickered. And standing beside it was Mama Adanma, but not like before. Her wrapper was torn at the edges. Her face carried both sorrow and fury. Behind her, the shadow rose again, taller now, thicker, clinging to the tree like smoke. "You made a covenant," the shadow hissed. The wind howled violently. Mama Adanma's spirit turned to her son. "You did more than push me," she said quietly. And that was when the memory hit him fully. The day she died. After their argument, Emeka had stormed out of the house. But he did not go far. He met the men from the city behind the palm wine shed. They wore dark glasses and spoke softly. They told him the money he borrowed needed spiritual reinforcement. "Just bring something personal from your mother," one had said. "Something that connects her spirit to the land." Emeka had stolen her coral beads that morning. He handed them over. The leader smiled. "That is enough." He never understood what that meant. Until now. Heartbeat pounding, Mama Adanma looked at him with tears in her eyes. "You tied my spirit to their altar." The shadow laughed. She was payment. The next market day, the sky turned an unnatural shade of gray. Traders felt it, an unease, a heaviness. At exactly midday, Mama Adanma appeared again. But this time she was not alone. The shadow stood beside her, fully formed, tall as a palm tree. Its eyes burned like charcoal. Umbrellas flipped. Stalls cracked. Tomatoes rolled across the red earth like spilled blood. Children screamed and ran. The shadow's voice boomed across the market. The debt is unpaid. Papa Nwankwo stepped forward bravely. What debt? The shadow pointed at Emeka. His soul. The crowd erupted in horror. Under pressure, Emeka confessed everything in front of the elders. The money, the beads, the meeting. But there was more. There was a second condition, he whispered. If the land was not sold within 7 market cycles, the spirit tied to the offering would begin collecting others. A cold silence fell. Collecting others? Ngozi repeated softly. Emeka's lips trembled. Yes. As if summoned by his words, a trader suddenly collapsed, foam forming at the corner of her mouth. Another man fell beside her. The shadow grew stronger. Feeding. Mama Adanma's spirit cried out in agony. They are draining the market. The village priest arrived, carrying sacred chalk and a carved staff. He drew symbols in the earth, chanted ancient words, but the shadow only laughed. You are too late. Papa Nwankwo turned to Emeka sharply. How many market cycles has it been? Emeka counted under his breath. His face drained of color. 6. A collective gasp rose. Tomorrow would be the 7th, the final cycle. If the land was not surrendered or the debt repaid, the shadow would claim not just Emeka, but the entire market. Mama Adanma floated closer to her son, her glow flickering weakly. You must break the covenant, she whispered. How? He cried desperately. The shadow answered before she could. Return what was taken with blood. The ground beneath them trembled, earth rumbling. The priest shook his head. It demands sacrifice. Emeka fell to his knees. I will give myself. The shadow hissed in delight. But one soul is no longer enough. The villagers backed away in fear. The wind intensified again. The Yadala tree began shedding leaves violently. And then, Mama Adanma's spirit did something unexpected. She stepped fully between her son and the shadow. Her form burned brighter than ever before. You will not have him. The shadow roared in fury. You cannot stop the pact. She turned to Emeka one last time. There is something you do not know. His eyes widened. What? She opened her mouth to speak, but suddenly her voice vanished. The shadow lunged forward and wrapped around her like chains. Screaming, her light flickered violently. The villagers cried out in horror. And just before she was swallowed completely, she forced out 4 chilling words. The land is not ours. Everything froze. The wind stopped instantly. The shadow paused. Papa Nwankwo stepped forward slowly. What do you mean? But it was too late. Mama Adanma's spirit disappeared into the darkness. The shadow turned toward the village slowly, and for the first time, it smiled. If the land is not yours, then you all owe me. The ground beneath the Afor Market cracked open, whiter than before, and from inside the earth, more shadows began rising. What did she mean by, the land is not ours? Who truly owns the market grounds? And what ancient secret is buried beneath Umuahia village? Tomorrow is the 7th market cycle, and if the truth is not uncovered before sunrise, the entire village will belong to the darkness.
The ground did not close. It breathed, slow, heavy, like something ancient waking from a long, patient sleep. The cracks beneath the Afor Market stretched like veins across the red earth. Shadows continued rising, tall, thin, wavering like smoke caught in human shape. Low rumbling, villagers fell to their knees. Some prayed, some wept, some could not even scream. Emeka stood frozen at the center of it all, his chest tight, his thoughts unraveling. The land is not ours. His mother's final words echoed in his skull. Not ours. Not ours. Papa Nwankwo grabbed his shoulder roughly. What does she mean? The elder demanded. But Emeka had no answer. And then, a voice rose from the oldest woman in the village. Bent with age, blind in one eye, silent for years, until now. It is the forgotten ground, she whispered. The wind shifted. All heads turned toward her. The market was not built on empty land. A collective shiver passed through the crowd. She pointed her trembling finger toward the Udala tree. Before Umuahia village, before our father's fathers, this was a shrine. The priest froze mid-chant. The old woman continued. A shrine to Allah, to the Earth Mother. Long before houses, before farms, before roads. This land was sacred. It was never sold. It was never inherited. It was entrusted. And when the first settlers arrived generations ago, they made a vow. They would honor the land, feed it, respect it, never trade it for greed. But time buried the promise. Just as surely as they buried Mama Adanma, the shadow let out a slow, satisfied hiss. Yes. Its voice no longer boomed. Now it vibrated, deep in the bones. The vow was broken. The priest stepped forward slowly, realization dawning across his face. The land cannot be sold, he breathed. Emeka staggered backward. He remembered. The men in dark glasses. Their quiet smiles. You must sell the land quickly. They knew. They had known. They did not want the land. They wanted what would happen when it was claimed unlawfully. The shadow was not theirs. They had only awakened it. The cracks in the earth widened again. Another trader screamed as a shadow brushed her ankle. Terrified screaming, the priest slammed his carved staff into the ground. This is not a demon, he shouted. It is the land defending itself. Silence. Heavy. Understanding spread like wildfire. The shadow was not random. It was not hungry for chaos. It was bound by covenant. And covenants demanded balance. Emeka fell to his knees in the dirt. His expensive shirt soaked in red earth. His polished sandals lost somewhere in the panic. I was wrong, he sobbed. I wanted more. I wanted cars. This status. His voice cracked. I traded what was never mine. The shadow drifted closer. It did not rush him. It circled, judging. You tied your mother's spirit to greed, it whispered. Mama Adanma's faint glow flickered inside the darkness surrounding it. Still trapped, still fighting. The old blind woman raised her voice again. There is only one way. All eyes turned to her. The vow must be restored. Papa Nwankwo nodded slowly. The land must be returned to the Earth Mother. The priest understood immediately. No one must own it. The crowd murmured. The market was their livelihood, their pride, their survival. But the earth trembled again, reminding them. The land was never property. It was trust. Emeka pressed his forehead to the soil. I renounce it, he cried. I release it. I give it back. The priest quickly drew sacred chalk symbols across the cracked ground. The elders joined hands. The traders followed. Even the children. They formed a wide circle around the deepest fracture in the earth. The priest began chanting ancient words long forgotten. Words not spoken in generations. The old woman echoed him. So, from the chant spread. One voice became many. Many became one. Low rhythmic chanting. The air thickened. The shadow writhed violently. It hated unity. It hated remembrance. The cracks in the ground began to pulse with golden light. The same light that had glowed from Mama Adanma's grave. The Udala tree trembled. Its leaves shimmered. The shadow shrieked. Inhuman scream. You cannot undo what was signed. But Papa Nwankwo stepped forward boldly. No contract stands above the earth. The chanting intensified. The ground glowed brighter. The shadow began thinning. Stretching. Pulling backward. Mama Adanma's spirit pushed outward from within it. Her indigo wrapper shimmered like woven starlight. Her yellow scarf glowed like dawn. Her coral beads burned with fierce light. She looked at her son, and this time, there was no fury, only peace. Greed blinds, she said gently, but the land remembers truth. With one final unified shout, the villagers pressed their palms to the earth. Ife Allah, honor the land. The golden light erupted upward like sunrise breaking through night. The shadow let out one final roar, and shattered, not into pieces, but into dust, blown away by a wind that felt clean. The cracks in the earth sealed slowly, the red soil smoothing over as if nothing had happened. Mama Adanma's spirit stood free now. Radiant. She touched Emeka's forehead gently. "You must live differently," she whispered. "I will, Mama," he cried. Her glow began fading. Softly. Naturally. Like sunset. And this time, she did not vanish in anger. She dissolved into light. The Udala tree stood still. Whole again. Morning light broke over Umuahia village. The 7th market cycle arrived quietly. No shadows rose. No wind howled. Only birds. Only life. The elders gathered and made a declaration. Afor Market would no longer be owned land. It would belong to the community. No buying. No selling. No personal claim. Only stewardship. Emeka sold his city dreams. Not the land. He used his skills to improve the market honestly. Built better stalls. Stronger roofs. Clean water systems. He wore simpler clothes. Walked barefoot often. And every market morning, before any sale, he poured a small libation into the earth. "For what we almost forgot," he would say. And beneath the Udala tree, if you stand very quietly, you may feel warmth in the soil. Not anger. Not hunger. But approval. Because some spirits do not haunt. They guard. And some land is not meant to be owned. Only honored. So this is the end. If you enjoyed this video, please do not forget to subscribe, like, and share. Also click the notification bell for future updates. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.